I know I said I was going to take a break from making YouTube videos, but I only recently discovered this situation that I wanted to kind of rant about, and that's Lindsey Ellis quitting YouTube, which is so sad and so disappointing because I'm a fan of Lindsey Ellis and I've always been a fan of hers, and it's really sad to see her go. And even though I know that this is probably an indefinite thing and she's probably never going to come back as part of me, I have a sliver of hope that maybe one day, a year or two in the future, she changes her mind. But honestly, let me not even get my hopes up, because I think she was really affected by what happened to her and by what led to her leaving the platform. So if you've been unaware, if you don't know who Lindsey Ellis is, basically she's a video essayist who makes, like, you know, film critic videos. She does really interesting dissections of movies and TV shows and all sorts of different forms of media, and she is a very, like, left-ish person, left-leaning, liberal, whatever you want to call her. And so she brings a very feminist, pro-LGBTQ, anti-racist perspective to her work, right? Which, you know, makes the reason for why she's quitting so much more ridiculous when you get into explaining what happened, right? So if you know Lindsay and you're familiar with her content, she has a very sort of like snarky personality, and that tone could be read into everything that she says and writes, right? So she put out a tweet last year when Raya and the Last Dragon came out, sort of comparing Raya and the Last Dragon to Avatar: The Last Airbender, which quite fairly it does have a similar concept to that famous show that preceded it, right? So it's not like a far-fetched thing. She wasn't the first person to draw that comparison, right? People basically started to tell her that she was racist because she was comparing two different East Asian or Southeast Asian inspired cartoons, and with the implication that all things Asian are the same. So people really dug deep. Y'all should teach yoga with the amount of stretching y'all do. It is funny to me, like, the way that people on the internet just, oh my god, I don't even know how to, like, even process how horrendous, like, of a stretch that is to say that this is a racist tweet. It is in such bad faith to read this tweet and to say that this makes Lindsey Ellis a racist. And on top of that, people have been posting that, because this, unfortunately, bad timing happened around the time, or at least a little bit after, the situation in the US where some Asian women were murdered in a mass murder in a shooting, and people were, you know, and the Stop Asian Hate movement happened, and people were sort of saying that this contributes to that same sort of ideology. No. Why would y'all even draw a comparison to a tweet comparing a movie with a TV show to something like that? That has nothing to do with Asian hate. That has nothing to do with institutional racism in the United States. She drew a very valid comparison of two forms of media that are similar. And I believe the writers of Raya said that they were inspired, at the very least, that they didn't mind the comparisons, right? Because of how iconic Avatar is. I mean, Avatar is a reference point for so many, like, books and TV shows and movies. Like, it's such an iconic show. I've never watched it, but I know, like, the main concept of the show because it is referenced, not necessarily referenced, but it is used, you know, like, its inspiration is in a lot of different, like, media that came after it. Famously, Tomi Adeyemi's book Children of Blood and Bone. So people wanted to further justify her cancellation as a terrible person, so people started to pull up a whole bunch of things that she did like 10 years ago and 5 years ago. She has a whole video where she basically went through every single thing that people were accusing her of to sort of, like, you know, debunk and explain herself, and also apologize where it was necessary to apologize. And there were some things that she did and said in the past that I would say are terrible, and she needed to take accountability for that, which I think she did take accountability for pretty much everything in that one video. Everything she needed to take accountability for, I think she pretty much did. Did she do it in the best way that she possibly could? I don't know. That's up to people to determine. You know, you don't have to agree with me. But I don't think that Lindsey Ellis did or said anything irrevocably harmful. Like, yeah, she made and said inappropriate jokes in the past. She did and said inappropriate things. but I don't think that anything she did, warrants people canceling her or trying to deplatform her. I know that you're not supposed to say that it was a different time, but listen, 10 years ago, like, the cultural landscape was so different, and certain things that are not okay to say now, people had no problem saying back then. They didn't get the same kind of backlash, and that doesn't justify it. That doesn't make it right. And obviously, if you did say something 10 years ago that was terrible, you should at least apologize for it and show that you've learned and show that you're doing better and whatnot. But like, it does, even though it doesn't justify saying racist things or doing inappropriate things 10 years ago, even though it doesn't justify it, right? It's understandable because those things, people generally did not have the same kind of like critical eye back then that they did now. So it created the capacity that allowed people to do and say things that were a little bit more inappropriate. And without, a general discussion or access to a general discourse that guides our morality in that sense that we have now that we didn't really have back then, you can't really expect that everybody would have been saying and doing squeaky clean things in 2010. Oh my god, like, to antagonize her for these mistakes that she made like when she was in her 20s, I just think is so unfair, especially when given her work that she produces now, that she's been producing in the past few years. You can see that is not who she is, that's not how she thinks. And so it sickens me that we always kind of like hold people to something that they said 10 years ago. Like, okay, it's okay to ask for an apology, it's okay to be critical and maybe say, hey, you did this thing. But even when they apologize, like, to me, I realize that it's not even about the apology anymore, because even when people apologize, even when they try to say that they've learned and that they do better, there is this, people still just want to continue trashing on the person. And to me, it seems like people just like that. I think, no matter how much people apologize or explain themselves or are defensive, or even if they do something to sort of like make up for it, they still get condemned because I think y'all just genuinely enjoy tearing people down. That's very sad. That's a very sad thing about our community. So anyways, basically Lindsay made that video, and then after that she started making her regular video content. So I was like, okay, good, great. She made like 4 videos after that, and I was like, okay, great, she's getting back into the groove of what she used to do before, and she's not letting this affect her. And I think the video somewhat generated a little bit more of an empathetic view towards her. So I was like, okay, good, she's going back to normal. Then she hadn't made a video in like 2 months, and I was like, oh, maybe she's on a break. ContraPoints takes like a year and a half between each of her videos. So I was like, okay, maybe Lindsay, what's her name, Ask a Mortician, takes like a month now between each videos, because I know it takes a lot to make a video, right? I make shitty videos like this, and to me that's still a lot, right? So I could imagine how much work goes into those types of videos. So I was like, okay, maybe she's just working on some new projects and whatnot. And then she published a little written piece on her Patreon. It was public, it's not anymore, but I will link a video from Jessie Gender who reads it out if you want to know what Lindsay said. It's called Walking Away from Omilus, which is a reference to a Ursula K. Le Guin. I don't know if that's how you say her name, but I read the story. Because of the title of Lindsey Ellis's little essay. And it's a really good story. You should read it. I should probably get into Ursula K. Le Guin, I think. Anyways, yeah, so I read the story, and then I went back and I looked at Jessie Gender's video and listened to her reading Lindsay's Patreon piece, where she announced essentially that she's going to be quitting YouTube because the harassment has not stopped. People on all ends of the spectrums, left, right, liberal, have been still harassing her and calling her a racist and whatnot. And it's just quite sad, really, because the overzealous, like, I was talking about this on Twitter, but like this overzealous criticism and hypersensitivity and just desire to tear somebody down for the littlest things that they said that could be problematized. Like, what is it accomplishing? You ran somebody off of you ran Lindsey Ellis off of the internet. You ran somebody whose content was very feminist, very pro LGBTQ, very anti-racist. At the very least, even if her content was not all that political or all that, great in terms of like solving social issues, you could watch her videos and tell that this person is allied with all of the good causes. Right? You can tell that this is a progressive person with a platform who brings a progressive perspective to the content that she produces. You ran her off of the internet to what avail for a fucking tweet that literally was not even racist. I'm sorry, I just don't think this tweet was racist. And even though she might have done and said questionable things in the past, I just don't think that warrants running her off of the internet. What did you accomplish? Running her off of the internet to what avail? To what fucking avail? Did you end racism? Did you end Asian hate? Did you end any isms or any phobias by running this woman off of the internet? Because she thought Raya and the Last Dragon was similar to fucking Avatar The Last Airbender. Which it was. Even the names, Raya and the Last Dragon, Avatar The Last Airbender. Girl, it's mind-boggling. I explained this to a friend of mine who's not really like, in tune to like online things. And he was like, what? He didn't even understand, like it didn't even make sense to him. He didn't even react or care to talk about it because it sounded like fiction. It sounded like, I don't know, like if an alien from a alternate like universe or fucking like other side of the galaxy comes to Earth and starts to talk about their cultures and customs and you can't even begin to comprehend it. You know what I mean? Like, it just does not, speaking a different language, like it just does not make sense to a regular person who does not, spend the amount of time on the internet that a lot of us do. But I do feel like I should tie it back to the book community a little bit, not just because Lindsey Ellis is an author, but because I think this discussion is very relevant for us because we have a reputation on this online book community of also being overcritical, of also, canceling people and having issues with people who say problematic things, what's her name? Sasha this? What's she name? Sasha Alberto? Sasha Alsberg. Alberto. Oh, good, the light come off. Sorry, Sasha. Oh, Sasha, do that. Sasha hacked into my system and she take off my light. She said, "Bet you call me Alberto, you fucking bitch." Yeah, so Sasha Alsberg, Ariel Bissett, this is too bright. Ariel Bissett, Rachel Marie. Ooh, maybe she deserved it. She was a little situation. Chandler Ainsley. I'm not picking up for these people, by the way. Like, I know that they've done and said things that people have an issue with, and I get it. Like, these are like very privileged, mostly white women who just do and say really weird things that they honestly don't even need to do and say half the time. Like, y'all could just shut the fuck up. So I don't have a problem with people having an issue with them. Let's get that clear. Or the things that they've said and done, especially Rachel Marie, right? I don't have a problem with people criticizing them and having an issue with them or calling them out for being problematic or exhibiting problematic behavior. What I do think is noteworthy for us to observe is how we respond to these people. Are we just interested in holding them accountable, problematizing the things that they're saying and doing, and hoping that they move forward? I think some of us are, but I do feel like a lot of us just like to revel in their demise. And maybe they deserve it, maybe Sasha Alsberg really did, forge a Sarah J. Maas signature and try to sell it to fans. I don't know. Maybe she deserves to be dragged through the mud for it. But I get the feeling that even if she didn't do something that bad, she would still be dragged to an extent, because I feel like it is so easy to get caught up in this kind of like mob mentality of, oh yes, let's tear this person down. You know, this person who has more power than us, who's more popular than us, who has more money than us, more access than us. You know, I think there's a little envy rooted. You know, I mentioned ContraPoints before. I recommend that if you watch 3 videos on her channel, watch these 3 videos in order. Watch her video on canceling, watch her video on it was justice, then envy. Canceling, justice, envy. Canceling, justice, envy. Watch that's like a trilogy. Watch those 3 videos. They're long as fuck. That bitch could talk, but I think she makes some really good points in all of those videos. So you should watch those videos. I think there's this thing on us that we like to revel in the demise of these people. It's entertaining, you know. It's exhilarating, and I think that we really have to watch out for that and be conscious of that whenever we're trying to problematize something, an author, a book, a booktuber, somebody in the community, because even if they do and say something problematic, sometimes I'm not sure that the punishment fits the crime, you know. And again, I don't know that Sasha Ellsberg was badly cancelled, or Chandler Ainsley, or even Ariel Bissett. I mean, Rachel Marie was. But I do feel like we do have examples of us going overboard with it, right? Sorry, I had to get up and make sure that the camera was still recording, because sometimes, yeah. Oh my god, my hair looks so... Y'all could have told me my hair was looking weird. I feel like I'm just making it worse, am I? I put coconut oil, so it's just honestly kind of flat and clumped up right now. Where was I? Right, yeah, well, anyways, the point is that I feel like we just tend to revel in this sort of like cancelling of people and bringing down of people with bigger platforms, and I think we need to have a much more reasonable approach to this type of culture in our community, right? Whatever happened to reading or watching or consuming a piece of media, whether it's a book, a movie, a fucking tweet, and having a disagreement, problematizing something in it, saying I don't really agree with that, or I don't quite know where this is going, but this is my opinion, this is my take, and just leaving it at that. Why does it have to be a moralistic, like, you did something wrong because of this tiny little problematic thing, so now your whole book, your whole career, your whole tweet, everything that you did and said, now we must condemn. And if you support this person or this book or this thing, then you are also complicit in whatever it is I'm accusing them of. Why do we do that? Why can't you just like point out or critique the problematic thing and even hold the person accountable without this unnecessary, vile kind of like way of looking at it? I just don't understand it. I mean, don't we learn this when we read classics in school? Like, you read the book, you pass out the things that are outdated, that are inappropriate, you problematize it, you critique it, but that's not a grounds for banning the book, boycotting the book, cancel. I mean, you can't really cancel all these dead authors, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not grounds for antagonizing the authors. It's not grounds for, like, you can... I don't know why we can't just have the conversations that we want to and critique things that are problematic without this sort of like, it's like an all or nothing thing. Either the thing is perfect and squeaky clean and nothing is wrong with it, or it's completely problematic, the author must be cancelled, they're a terrible person, kick them off the internet. There's no middle ground anymore. And there are absolutely cases where I think, you know, somebody does not deserve sympathy. J.K. Rowling, for example, she's unquestionably transphobic, right? In my opinion. And I don't really have any sympathy for her. And I don't think she was even cancelled, because most people across the world probably still agree with her and support her anyways. But then there are more like middle ground things, right? Like, okay, so Naomi Novik, right, had written her little book. And she had like really weird things throughout the book in the way that she represented people of color, definitely. And I get why it made people uncomfortable and why people might not want to support her as an author anymore. But I don't think that makes her a raging racist that we must cancel and condemn. You know, I think it is possible to pass out the things that we think are informed by perhaps a subconscious or implicit bias, and criticize it so that it does not happen again in the future, but in a way that does not in a way that allows the author to grow and allows them to understand where people are coming from and change so that they can continue to have a career and continue to be supported by the people who still choose to support them, as opposed to this sort of thing whereas like just cancel them, get them off the internet, get them away. I mean, at some point, like with Lindsey Ellis, going back to Lindsey Ellis because I stopped talking about her at this point, I think it's abuse. It's not just canceling, it's abuse. Like, the things that people tweeted to her that she showed in that video that she did, honestly, it's just abuse. It's abuse because it was not warranted. And it creates this perception and this narrative for people who don't know about Lindsey Ellis and who wouldn't go to actually like see what she did and said. It creates this narrative that that's what she is. And there are people who will go around thinking that this Lindsey Ellis person is this big racist. Because she thought Raya was similar to Avatar. She's such a racist. One thing I should say, support Lindsey Ellis, please. Like, my first book for the year was Axioms N. This is her her debut novel. It is the first in a science fiction series. I think it's going to be 5 books. It's about first contact and about this girl named Cora with daddy issues who ends up being abducted by an alien. Her dad is like this whistleblower, this famous whistleblower who's like, oh my god, I found this report documenting like first contact with humanity, and then like the alien comes and tries to kidnap Cora, presumably because of her connection with her father. Presumably, when you read the book you'll know it's a little bit more than that. Then she ends up kind of like befriending the alien, and she ends up in a whole situation that she didn't expect. This book takes a turn that I don't think you'd expect, especially if you don't. I didn't read the summary. I just knew it was by Lindsey Ellis and it was about aliens, so it just went down a whole route that I didn't expect, and I really enjoyed it. It was very like existential. It was very, like contemplating, like what does it even mean to be a human. I'm about 60 pages into book 2. These are the only 2 books out right now. So this is called Truth of the Divine. It's the second book, came out last year. This one came out in 2020. And yeah, go support Miss Lindsey Ellis. So yeah, I think that's everything I'm gonna have to say. My parents are gonna start making noise now, so I'm gonna sign off here. I really don't know if and when I'm gonna post this video, but I really felt like I needed to get this off my chest. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.